It begins quietly, in the space between night and dawn, when the body has not yet spoken, and the mind still lingers between dream and waking. In that stillness, there is something ancient waiting. A whisper from within the blood, a pulse beneath the skin, calling us back to a truth we have forgotten. For thousands of years, the elders of many lands began their days not with food, not with movement, but with water. A simple act so pure it was seen as divine communion. Before the sun rose, before a single word was spoken, they drank, not for thirst, but for remembrance, to remind the body that it is part of the earth and that healing begins in silence. They believed that the first drop of water at dawn was not ordinary. It carried a vibration, one that echoed the frequency of creation itself. In Japan, the monks of Mount Hiei would walk barefoot to a hidden spring at the edge of the forest. There, in the half-light, they would cup their hands and let the cold water touch their lips. They called it Mizu no Inochi, the living water, and they said that it could purify not just the body, but the spirit. In India, Ayurvedic sages taught that water taken before sunrise awakened the digestive fire, known as Agni, aligning the organs and clearing emotional residue from the night. The Egyptians believed that the Nile's first morning flow carried the essence of rebirth, and so they would dip a vessel and drink in reverence to the god Hapi, keeper of life's current. Somewhere along the way, in the noise of modern life, this ritual vanished. We replaced silence with screens, breath with rush, and sacred water with stimulants that numb rather than awaken. But the body remembers. Even after 50 years of life, of stress, of burden, of habits both kind and cruel, it remembers. Every cell, every organ, every drop of blood still holds that ancient program, waiting for the signal to begin again. And that signal comes not from medicine, not from machines, but from the simplest of all elements, water. When you drink water on an empty stomach, something remarkable happens. Before food enters, before sugar or caffeine interrupts the quiet, the body receives the message of renewal. The water travels through the stomach unchallenged, slipping past the gates of digestion, moving directly into the bloodstream, the tissues, the organs. It cleanses the remnants of the night, the toxins, the stress hormones, the microscopic debris left by the day before. It's as if the body takes a deep breath after holding it for too long. In that moment, every cell rejoices. The kidneys awaken, the liver hums, the intestines stretch and realign. The heart feels it too, not metaphorically but physically, as the blood becomes thinner, lighter, more vibrant, moving with greater rhythm through the arteries. But there is more. Science, when humble enough to listen, is beginning to confirm what the ancients always knew. Water carries information. It is not a blank substance. It responds. It records. It reflects the intention of the one who drinks it. In laboratories, researchers like Masaru Emoto once photographed the crystals of frozen water that had been exposed to words, love, peace, gratitude, and compared them to those that had been cursed, ignored, or exposed to fear. The difference was not small. The water that had been blessed formed perfect, luminous geometries, snowflakes of harmony. The other turned chaotic, dark, broken. Skeptics dismissed it as pseudoscience, but those who live by intuition recognized something deeper, that consciousness and matter are not separate, and that when you drink water with awareness, you are literally shaping the way your body feels and heals. Imagine, then, what happens when a person over 50, whose cells have known fatigue, whose organs have carried decades of weight, returns to this sacred practice. The morning water becomes a messenger of rejuvenation. It tells the cells, it is time to cleanse, it is time to begin anew. The body listens. The stomach releases old acid buildup. The intestines start to move gently, clearing the path for the day's nourishment. The liver begins to release stored waste, and the kidneys flush out residues that have lingered in silence. The lymphatic system, that hidden river that carries the memory of immunity, begins to flow again. And because the blood is no longer thick with the byproducts of food or stress, oxygen travels more freely, the brain awakens softly, and clarity replaces fog. In this still, quiet act, you're doing something that modern medicine rarely teaches. You are creating alignment, not just physical, but energetic. The Japanese monks believed that before one can speak truth or pray sincerely, the body must be cleansed with pure water. They said, if the river is clear, the reflection of heaven will appear. To them, the body was that river. To drink on an empty stomach was to allow heaven's reflection to appear in the heart. There is a reason elders in villages once looked decades younger than their age. They lived in rhythm with the elements. They rose with the sun. They walked on the earth, and they began their day with water. Their blood carried life, not chemicals. Their organs pulsed in harmony with the world around them. Today, when you stand before a glass of water at dawn, you are reconnecting with that lineage. You are saying to the body, I remember what you are made of. The old masters would whisper a blessing before drinking, not a prayer of request but of gratitude. Thank you for remembering me, they would say to the water. Thank you for becoming me. For water, once inside you, does not remain separate. It becomes the lens through which you see, the vessel through which you feel. The tears that fall from your eyes are not different from the rivers that once carved mountains. They are the same substance, merely wearing different names. So when you drink on an empty stomach, before the noise of the day, you are not just hydrating. You are merging with a sacred current that has known the earth since its birth. Modern biochemistry has caught a glimpse of this. Researchers have discovered that hydration first thing in the morning activates metabolic repair. It signals the body to remove oxidized molecules and begin cell renewal. In Japan, doctors call it water therapy, and studies have shown improvements in blood pressure, digestion, circulation, even skin elasticity among older adults who practiced it daily. But what these studies cannot measure is what happens to the spirit. When a person over 50 begins their day, not in anxiety or haste but in reverence, in silence with water, something in the heart shifts. The nervous system calms. The parasympathetic pathways, responsible for healing and restoration, take over. The body moves from survival into balance. And in that balance, miracles that science struggles to name quietly occur. There is a rhythm to this ritual. You rise before sunrise while the world is still half asleep. The air is cooler, charged with negative ions that soothe the body. You pour a glass of water, not from a machine but from a source as close to natural as possible. You hold it for a moment, letting your breath settle. You feel gratitude, not for the act of drinking, but for being alive to receive it. And then you drink, slowly, gently, letting it touch your tongue, your throat, your chest. You feel it spreading, not just through your body, but through your energy. You sense it awakening something ancient, something that has been waiting. That is the beginning of healing. Those who practice this for weeks often speak of unexpected changes. Their mornings no longer feel heavy. The digestive system begins to function more efficiently. The complexion brightens, sleep deepens, and an inner calm replaces restlessness. But beneath these physical transformations lies something subtler, a reconnection to trust. When you treat water as sacred, you start to feel that life itself is sacred again. The ordinary becomes miraculous. The glass in your hand becomes a temple. The act of drinking becomes a prayer. In ancient Hebrew mysticism, it was said that before creation, there was only water. The divine spirit moved upon its surface, and from that movement form was born. That means every act of healing is a return to water, to the original language of life. After 50, the body yearns for that return. It wants to remember how to flow. It wants to forgive. It wants to wash away the years of tension stored in the muscles, the regrets lodged in the organs, the fears crystallized in the blood. When you drink water on an empty stomach, you are not only nourishing and you are cleansing memory. You are inviting your cells to release their stories and begin again. Listen closely the next time you take that first sip in silence. There is a sound, the faint but unmistakable, the sound of your body saying yes. It is the same sound the earth makes when rain finally falls on dry land, the same sound of the ocean breathing at night. That is the sound of life returning. And if you stay still long enough, you may feel something rise from within, a sense of peace so pure it feels like prayer. Because water does not only cleanse the body, it cleanses perception. It softens the mind. It clears the fog between you and the divine. The truth is simple but profound. After 50, healing is not about adding more pills, more supplements, more effort. It is about removing what no longer serves. Water, in its sacred simplicity, is the greatest remover of all. It clears the path so that energy can flow again. It reminds every cell that life is not about holding, but releasing. The heart, once burdened by years of unspoken emotion, begins to lighten. The breath deepens. And in that quiet space, you remember who you are beneath time. To drink water upon waking is to honor the first law of existence: flow. When the rivers of the world stop flowing, life ends. When the rivers within us stagnate, aging accelerates. But when they flow freely, when you greet the morning with this elemental ritual, the body becomes a living river again. Wrinkles soften, fatigue dissolves, inflammation recedes, not because of magic, but because you have restored the harmony between body and nature. If you listen deeply enough, you'll notice something miraculous. After days of this practice, the taste of water changes. It becomes sweeter, lighter, almost luminous. That is not the water changing, for it is you. Your cells, once resistant, begin to absorb with joy. The microbiome of the gut, that hidden community of life, starts to flourish. Old toxins find their way out through sweat and breath. Even the mind feels washed, thoughts clearer, emotions softer. This is not coincidence, it is resonance. The water you drink carries not only minerals but vibration, a code that teaches the body to harmonize again. And when your vibration rises, so does your capacity for healing. For centuries, mystics said that water was the only substance that could cross the boundary between worlds. It moves between solid, liquid, and vapor, between earth and sky, with effortless grace. Perhaps that is why it is also the bridge between matter and spirit. When you drink it consciously, especially in the morning when the veil between night and day is thin, you are walking that bridge. You are merging the physical and the divine. You are participating in creation itself as the ancients once did, simply by honoring the sacred in the ordinary. There will come a morning when you drink that glass and feel something indescribable, a sense of being both cleansed and filled at once. That is when you will understand what the elders meant when they said that water carries the breath of God, because in that moment you are not just hydrating, you are remembering. You are remembering that beneath your skin flows the same element that shaped oceans, carved valleys, and gave birth to life itself. You are remembering that your body is not separate from the earth, but part of her pulse. You are remembering that healing is not a miracle, it is a return. And so the next time you stand before that simple glass at dawn, know this: it is not just water. It is memory. It is life. It is the oldest medicine known to man. Drink it as the monks did, as the sages did, as your ancestors once did, with gratitude, with reverence, with silence. Let it cleanse not only your organs, but your thoughts. Let it remind you that you are made of the same sacred substance that flows through every river, every cloud, every tear, every heartbeat. And in that remembrance, healing begins. The old texts spoke of it, though their words have been forgotten, buried under centuries of noise, in faded scrolls, in hieroglyphs carved deep into the stone walls of forgotten temples, in chants whispered by those who lived in rhythm with the earth. They all pointed to the same truth. Water is not just a physical element. It is the silent messenger between the human and the divine. To drink it in purity, especially on an empty stomach, was to invite the universe itself to flow through the body. In ancient Tibet, monks practiced a morning ritual they called the first silence. They believed that at dawn the energy of the world was most receptive, neither day nor night, neither thought nor dream. They would sit facing the east, palms open, breathing slowly, and before the first ray of sunlight touched the earth, they would drink from a bowl of cold mountain water. That act, they said, aligned them with the breath of the cosmos. Their bodies became conduits of stillness, their minds clear as the sky reflected in the surface of a lake. To them, the water at dawn was different. Its energy was untainted by movement, by human thought, by the noise of the day. They said it carried the untouched breath of God. And so, by drinking it, they allowed the divine to enter not through words or beliefs, but through vibration. You can still feel that energy today if you rise early enough. Before the first car passes, before the light fully breaks, the air is heavy with something indescribable, a softness, a hum, a gentle charge. That is the world's first breath. The ancients drank from it. The Egyptians called this act shesmu, a term that meant both to press and to purify. In their temples, priests would press water through stones blessed under the full moon, believing that this transformed its essence. They would then drink it before rituals of healing and prophecy. To them, water was memory, and to purify it was to reset the body's code. Their hieroglyph for water resembled waves, but within those waves was hidden a second symbol, that of rebirth. They understood what modern minds are only beginning to rediscover, that within the smallest drop lies an infinite intelligence. In Japan, this understanding became medicine. The practice of drinking water on an empty stomach was not just spiritual but therapeutic. Centuries ago, the samurai adopted it as part of their daily discipline. They believed that morning water purified the spirit of fear and prepared the warrior to act with clarity. Later, doctors of Kampo medicine, a Japanese system rooted in ancient Chinese knowledge, studied this ritual scientifically. They found that it restored intestinal health, balanced hormones, and even helped cleanse the blood. But beyond the measurable, the practitioners spoke of another benefit, the awakening of Kai, the life force. They said that water, taken before food, travels straight to the cells that have slept through the night. It doesn't encounter the heaviness of digestion. It moves like a river through untouched land, washing, clearing, reviving. The body becomes a vessel of renewal. When one performs this ritual with intention, not rushing, not gulping, but in full awareness, the effect multiplies. The heart rate steadies, the breath deepens. The nervous system, strained by decades of tension, begins to unwind. The act of drinking becomes meditation. Western science now calls this parasympathetic activation. But what the ancients called it was peace entering the body. They said that water carries the vibration of serenity, and that when the body receives it without resistance, it tunes itself to that same frequency. That is why elders who practiced this ritual seemed ageless, their skin glowing, their movements light, their eyes calm. They were not merely hydrated, they were harmonized. In the forgotten deserts of Persia, where survival depended on the hidden wells that dotted the landscape, the Zoroastrian mystics believed water was the bridge between realms. They built underground channels called qanats, intricate systems that carried water across miles of sand. But to them, these were not just tunnels. They were veins of the earth, carrying divine consciousness from the mountain to the village, from heaven to man. Before drinking, they whispered blessings because they believed that to drink without gratitude was to close the flow of grace. They said the body after 50 becomes like a vessel coated in dust, and only gratitude can polish it enough for light to pass through again. Perhaps that is the real medicine of this ritual, not the chemical composition of water, but the posture of the soul as it receives it. Modern life teaches consumption without reverence, efficiency without awareness. We drink coffee half asleep, scroll through screens, rush into the day without ever asking what we are putting into our bodies. The ancients did not separate the physical from the spiritual. To them, every sip of water was a prayer of reconnection. They drank slowly, eyes closed, because they understood that healing begins with awareness. After 50, awareness becomes medicine. The body no longer obeys speed, it responds to presence. To drink water with presence is to communicate to the body that you are ready to listen. You are no longer forcing it, but collaborating with it. You are remembering its sacred intelligence. The human body is 70% water. The earth too is 70% water. This symmetry is not coincidence, it is design. The ancients saw it as proof that we are reflections of the world, microcosms of a divine ocean. When the water in our bodies stagnates, when it becomes clouded with toxins, with emotional residue, with regret, the reflection distorts. We lose our sense of connection, of peace. Drinking water on an empty stomach restores that balance. It tells the inner ocean to move again. Consider this. The stomach, when empty, is an open gate. It is the quietest it will ever be. No food to process, no acids to dissolve. It is a moment of silence within the body. Into that silence, the first sip of water enters like light entering a temple. It touches every organ, not as an intruder but as a messenger. The cells awaken and begin to communicate. The gut, often called the second brain, starts to send signals to the heart and mind, signals of calm, renewal, and readiness. That is why those who practice this ritual often report not only physical changes but emotional clarity. The fog lifts, anxiety lessens, gratitude arises naturally, without effort. Ancient Ayurvedic texts describe this in poetic language. They say that morning water washes away the dust of dreams. It is said to purify rasa dhatu, the first layer of bodily tissue associated with plasma and emotion. When rasa is pure, the mind becomes luminous. When it is clouded, one feels tired, heavy, confused. And so, they taught that the first act of the day should be purification through water, not for the sake of cleanliness but for illumination. The sages said that water connects the two worlds within us, the physical and the emotional, and that when we drink it with mindfulness, we are washing both simultaneously. If you look at water not as a substance but as consciousness, everything changes. You begin to understand why it reacts to love, to words, to prayer. The molecules of water are like mirrors. They rearrange themselves according to the vibrations they receive. When you hold your glass in silence and whisper gratitude, you are not performing superstition. You are programming your body. You are reminding it of harmony. Modern scientists now speak of structured water, the fourth phase of water, beyond liquid, solid, and vapor. In this phase, water becomes more ordered, more crystalline, and more capable of storing information. They have found it in living cells, around DNA, in the spaces between tissues. It seems that our bodies are not filled with random liquid, but with a living, responsive intelligence. When you drink water upon waking, before any interference, you are infusing your cells with this structure. You are giving them a clean signal, a fresh code. This is why elders who practice the ritual notice an increase in vitality. The metabolism stabilizes, blood sugar levels balance, digestion improves, skin becomes radiant, and the mind clears. But beyond the biological, something deeper unfolds, a renewal of trust in the natural intelligence of the body. They begin to feel guided again, as if their bodies are whispering directions. This is not imagination, it is coherence. When the body's waters are pure and structured, they conduct energy efficiently. The nervous system communicates effortlessly. The intuition sharpens. The person begins to feel aligned, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Imagine a river blocked by years of debris. When the first clear waters flow through it, the debris loosens, the current strengthens, and life returns to the banks. That is what happens inside you when you begin this ritual after 50. The years of stress, the hardened habits, the suppressed emotions, they begin to move. At first, there may be discomfort. You might feel more emotional, more reflective. But this is not regression. It is release. The body is cleansing not only toxins, but memories. In Chinese Taoist philosophy, it is said that water is the highest form of virtue because it nourishes all things without striving. The Tao Te Ching teaches, nothing is softer than water, yet nothing can resist it. To drink it consciously is to absorb that wisdom. It teaches you to move around obstacles instead of fighting them, to soften rather than harden, to flow instead of control. For those who have lived half a century, carrying the weight of countless battles, this lesson is medicine. Water becomes both teacher and healer. The ancients were not naive. They knew the body aged. They knew that time carved lines on the skin and slowed the pulse. But they also knew that aging was not decay. It was accumulation. And what accumulates can be washed away. They believed that the key to longevity was not to stop aging, but to flow through it gracefully as water flows through rock, shaping it yet remaining untouched. To drink water on an empty stomach is to remind the body how to flow again. It is a gentle defiance against stagnation. It is saying, I may be older, but I am not fixed. I can still change, still renew. Each morning becomes a small resurrection. You can see this truth in the faces of those who live by water, fishermen, monks by rivers, elders in villages built near springs. Their eyes have a calmness that no luxury can buy. They have spent a lifetime listening to the rhythm of flow. They understand that water is not outside of them. It is within. If you wake tomorrow and choose to begin this ritual, do not do it mechanically. Treat it as remembrance. Before you drink, take a breath. Feel your heartbeat. Whisper gratitude. Then drink, slowly, gently. Let the first sip remind you of rain. Let the second remind you of rivers. Let the third remind you of the ocean inside you. As it enters, imagine it traveling through your veins, clearing the old, awakening the new. Imagine it reaching your heart and whispering, flow again. In that moment, you are not simply a human drinking water. You are the earth hydrating itself through you. The same molecules that were once clouds, rivers, tears, and oceans are now part of your bloodstream. You are continuing a cycle older than civilization. Every sip is a reunion with eternity. And so the ancients taught, he who greets the dawn with water greets the divine within. For them it was never superstition. It was science written in the language of the soul. When you understand this, you will see that water is not passive. It is alive, aware, responding. It hears your thoughts, feels your emotions, mirrors your state. Drink it with anger, and it will mirror that vibration. Drink it with gratitude, and it will magnify your peace. After 50, when the body's waters have grown still from years of repetition, this awareness becomes liberation, because healing begins not in what you drink, but in how you drink it. The Japanese call it kansha no mizu, the water of gratitude. The Tibetans call it chulin, the essence drink. The Indians call it ushapan, the dawn water. Different names, one truth. Water drunk in awareness heals beyond measure. Perhaps the reason this truth was hidden is that it is too simple. Humanity tends to seek salvation in complexity, in pills and devices, in secrets sold for profit. But the universe hides its greatest medicine in the plainest places, in breath, in silence, in water. And so, when the body begins to tire with age, when energy fades and clarity dulls, the answer may not be found in laboratories or in modern cures, but in remembering what the ancients never forgot, that healing is not something you chase, it is something you allow. Water teaches this effortlessly. It does not fight, it flows, it does not hold, it releases, it does not demand, it receives. To drink water on an empty stomach after 50 is to remember that the same power that shaped the oceans flows through you, patiently, lovingly, infinitely. That is the revelation. There comes a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when the body begins to change. It's not the aging itself that you feel, but the slowing, the small signals whispered from within, the heaviness in the mornings, the shallow breath, the stiffness that lingers. Yet beneath those sensations lies something far more profound, the body's plea to return, to flow. It is asking to remember what it once knew, to be water again. For when you drink water on an empty stomach, you are not just hydrating, you are retraining the body to flow with the rhythm of life itself. In the temples of the old world, healers understood this phase of life not as decline, but as transformation. They saw the years beyond 50 as the body's invitation to ascend into wisdom, to shed what is heavy and carry only what is pure. They taught that the elements inside us, earth, air, fire, and water, begin to fall out of harmony as we age. The fire becomes too strong, the earth too rigid, the air too restless. But water, when honored, restores balance to all. It softens what has hardened, cools what has burned, and calms what has wandered too far from center. They believed that healing was not the fight against decay, but the remembrance of order. And that order began each morning when the first water entered the body. The body after 50 becomes like a sacred vessel that has weathered storms. It carries not only the weight of years, but the residue of emotions, fear, regret, anger, exhaustion, energies that settle deep into the tissues, shaping posture, breathing, even thought. The elders of Japan's mountain monasteries taught that this is why the ritual of drinking water must be done in silence. Words at that hour carry the heaviness of the waking mind, but silence allows the water to speak. They said that if you listen carefully as you drink, you can hear your own body answer. It is the sound of release, the sound of energy rearranging itself into harmony. In that still moment, before the first sip, something ancient begins to stir. The stomach, empty and receptive, becomes like the surface of a calm lake. The water, cold and pure, enters as light. It touches the inner walls of the body, and every cell responds as if recognizing a familiar song. The vagus nerve, which connects the gut to the heart and the brain, sends signals of peace throughout the system. The heart slows, the blood pressure lowers, the mind begins to clear. It is the same biological effect described by doctors today, yet in spiritual language, it is something greater, the soul re-entering its temple. The liver, that great alchemist of the body, begins its morning work. It filters what the night has gathered, the byproducts of thought and metabolism, and releases them. The kidneys awaken next, flushing away what no longer serves. The intestines, softened by water, begin to move again, releasing not only physical waste, but the weight of unprocessed emotion. It is said that the gut holds memories the mind cannot bear to keep. Every morning, when you drink on an empty stomach, you are gently washing away the stories that no longer belong to you, and as the water moves deeper, it reaches the bloodstream. The blood, like a river long clogged, begins to run clear. Oxygen rides upon it like sunlight over a stream. The heart, sensing this renewal, begins to beat more easily, as though relieved. You can almost feel the difference, the quiet surge of vitality that spreads outward, subtle yet unmistakable. Those who commit to this ritual speak of transformations they cannot explain. A woman of 70 in Kyoto once told a researcher that her eyesight had sharpened after months of dawn water. Another, a monk in the Himalayas, claimed that his dreams became vivid and peaceful. A healer in Greece said that after years of arthritis, her hands began to feel light again as though unburdened. Modern minds might call it placebo. The ancients would call it harmony restored. Transformation, they believed, does not come through resistance but through surrender. When you allow the water to flow freely through you, without rushing, without expectation, you align yourself with the principle of yielding. You stop fighting the current and begin moving with it. That is when the true healing begins. The Taoist masters described it beautifully. They said that water transforms because it never seeks to be anything other than itself. It does not compete with rock or fire or air. It simply flows around them until they yield. In this way, water teaches the art of effortless strength. To drink it consciously each morning is to invite that strength into your being. Slowly, without realizing, you begin to live like water, adaptable, calm, unstoppable. And as you live like water, your body follows. The inflammation that once clung to the joints begins to ease. The stiffness softens. The blood grows lighter. The cells begin to repair. Science explains this through improved hydration and circulation, but the soul knows another truth, that energy, once free, becomes light again. The Japanese monks would sometimes meditate by a waterfall after drinking their morning water. They believed that to stand before falling water was to witness the process of transformation itself, matter becoming movement, stillness becoming flow. They said that if you watched long enough, your own body would begin to feel lighter, as though it were dissolving into the sound. In that moment, they claimed, aging paused. Not because time stopped, but because they no longer resisted it. They had become one with it. That is the secret. When you stop resisting life, life renews you. When you drink water in the morning, it is not about fixing the body. It is about returning to that unity. Every sip becomes a surrender, a letting go of the heaviness of yesterday, a quiet acceptance of today. In that surrender, transformation happens on its own. Modern biologists might describe this as cellular renewal. They speak of autophagy, the body's natural process of cleansing damaged cells to make room for new ones. They have found that fasting and hydration trigger this ancient mechanism. But what they do not yet see is that this process is not only physical, it is spiritual. The cells are not merely recycling themselves, they are learning to remember their original state. in silence, in hydration, in awareness, they awaken to their purpose again. That is why the body feels different after several days of this ritual. It begins to glow, not only in the skin but in the aura, the energy that surrounds you. People may not know why, but they sense something luminous, something renewed. The Japanese call it Saimei no Hikari, the light of life. The Tibetans call it Tomo, the inner fire that shines when energy flows freely. In every culture, this phenomenon appears differently, but it always begins the same way, with stillness, with awareness, with water. After 50, the body is more sensitive to vibration. It responds not to quantity, but to quality. That is why the intention you place in your water matters. When you drink with fear, you feed fear. When you drink with peace, you feed peace. The elders knew this and always began the ritual with gratitude, no matter how simple their lives were. Gratitude structures the water. It gives it pattern, coherence, beauty. When that coherent water enters the bloodstream, it reorganizes chaos. It teaches your cells to remember harmony. Transformation does not demand struggle. It asks for devotion. In the desert monasteries of Egypt, healers would mark the beginning of their fasting with water at sunrise. They believed that the body, purified by this act, became more receptive to divine instruction. The mind cleared, intuition sharpened, and visions became vivid. They described this as opening the inner eye. Perhaps that is why many who practice morning water report feeling more intuitive, more calm, more in tune with life's subtleties. The water, by purifying the physical vessel, clears the lens of perception. It allows you to see with the heart again. This transformation extends beyond the body. Relationships soften, thoughts slow. You begin to sense the interconnectedness of all things. Because as you purify your inner waters, you begin to resonate with the world's waters. You feel the rivers differently, the rain differently, even the tears that fall differently. You begin to understand that your healing is not separate from the healing of the earth. There is a moment, perhaps weeks into this ritual, when something shifts in your mornings. You wake not with fatigue, but with quiet anticipation. You look forward to that glass of water as if meeting an old friend. You no longer drink it for health alone. You drink it for communion. And in that act, you begin to transform not only your physiology, but your perception of aging itself. Aging, you realize, is not the enemy. Stagnation is. When the inner waters flow, age becomes irrelevant. You may not erase time, but you transcend its weight. You begin to live in rhythm again. The cycles of night and day, of hunger and rest, of silence and speech, all begin to harmonize. The body, once a source of complaint, becomes an instrument of grace. Transformation through water is not loud. It does not announce itself. It arrives like the first light of dawn, soft, patient, inevitable. It is the unfolding of what was always meant to be. You do not become someone new. You remember who you have always been. And so the elders said, "Drink with awareness, and life will drink through you." They knew that transformation was not about effort, but alignment. That once the current flows freely, everything finds its place. The blood knows where to go, the heart knows when to rest, the mind knows when to stop. The soul finally remembers home. After 50, when many believe renewal is impossible, this truth becomes revolutionary. Because in every cell lies the same intelligence that shaped the oceans, the same patience that carved canyons, the same resilience that turns a drop into a wave. To awaken that intelligence, you need not force it. You only need to pour water into silence and let the body remember. Each morning becomes a ceremony of rebirth. You sit in stillness, glass in hand, and you feel the lineage of countless beings who have done the same. You sense the monks of Tibet, the sages of India, the healers of Egypt, the grandmothers of forgotten villages, all drinking with you, all part of the same current. In that moment, you are no longer just yourself. You are the continuation of something eternal. The transformation is not only physical, it is spiritual maturity, the realization that life's deepest secrets were never hidden in complexity, but in simplicity, that to heal is not to add, but to return. That water in its humility carries the highest wisdom. Flow, release, reflect, renew. And as this truth takes root, you begin to see the sacred everywhere. in the steam that rises from your cup, in the rain that touches your window, in the tears that fall and cleanse your heart. You begin to live as water lives, gently, persistently, gracefully. This is the transformation the ancients spoke of. Not the change of form, but the awakening of essence. Not the fight against time, but the merging with eternity. And it begins each morning, in silence, with a single sip. There is a moment in every journey when knowledge ceases to be something we learn and becomes something we remember. It happens quietly, like the slow unfolding of dawn across a still lake. You do not chase it. You awaken to it. The body, the mind, and the soul align, and you realize that what you sought in formulas and theories was always flowing within you, waiting to be recognized. Drinking water on an empty stomach day after day becomes more than a ritual. It becomes remembrance. At first it was discipline, a choice of health, a gesture of curiosity. But now, after weeks, perhaps months, something deeper has begun to stir. You wake before the alarm, drawn by an invisible call. You feel the hush of morning not as emptiness, but as invitation. And when you lift that glass of water to your lips, you no longer see liquid. You see light, captured, condensed, waiting to return home. The first sip moves through you like grace. It touches every cell, every hidden corner of your being, and you can almost hear the whisper of your own heartbeat, syncing with something greater, the pulse of the earth itself. You sense that your body is not merely flesh, but an instrument, and that water is the melody that tunes it. The space inside you, once filled with noise, worry, and weight, becomes a temple again. This is awakening, to realize that you are not drinking water. You are drinking life. In ancient teachings, awakening was never sudden. It was a gradual unveiling, layer after layer, illusion after illusion, until only truth remained. The sages spoke of it as a rising current, a force that begins in the body and ascends toward the light. They said it begins in the water of the body, the blood, the lymph, the fluids that carry energy, and that as these waters purify, the spirit becomes lighter. That is why purification always began with fasting, bathing, or drinking. The physical cleansing was never separate from the spiritual awakening. It was the doorway. In the temples of the Nile, initiates preparing for sacred knowledge spent 40 days purifying themselves with water before dawn. They believed that until the waters of the body reflected the heavens, wisdom could not be received. The Greeks called this catharsis, a cleansing not only of the body, but of perception. The Japanese monks called it misogi, standing beneath waterfalls until the self dissolved. The Mayans called it ya'ab, meaning return to flow. All spoke of the same truth. That enlightenment begins in the body's waters, and when those waters begin to move freely, when the rivers within you clear of stagnation and memory, something remarkable occurs. The mind quiets, the breath deepens, the heart expands. You begin to perceive not through logic but through resonance. You start to feel life instead of analyzing it. The colors around you seem brighter. The sounds of morning, the wind, the birds, the hum of unseen life, seem orchestrated just for you. It is as though the world itself is whispering, "Welcome back." Science can measure hydration levels, blood pressure, cellular repair. But what it cannot yet measure is what happens to consciousness when the body becomes a clear channel. The ancients understood that the body was the bridge between heaven and earth. Water, being the most fluid and reflective element, was the conductor of that bridge. When you drink with awareness, especially after 50, when experience has sculpted you, when wisdom is ready to emerge, you begin to connect with that bridge again. You may notice it first in subtle ways. Old habits lose their pull. Foods that once comforted you now feel heavy. Conversations that once drained you now seem hollow. You crave silence, you crave simplicity, you crave truth. This is not withdrawal, it is refinement. Your vibration has changed, and your body, purified and flowing, is now sensitive to what nourishes and what poisons. Water has taught you the difference. You begin to live as water lives, gently, without resistance. You find beauty in stillness, strength in softness. You begin to see that even pain, when allowed to flow, transforms into wisdom. And so you stop holding it. You stop fighting it. You let it move through you like a river moves around stones, carving wisdom into your being. The masters of old said that awakening is not the acquisition of new knowledge, but the dissolution of the false. When the inner waters clear, illusions sink to the bottom, and truth rises to the surface. That is why so many spiritual traditions spoke of water as the symbol of rebirth. To be baptized, to immerse, to drink, these were not metaphors, they were codes. The moment the body receives pure water in purity, the spirit remembers its origin. In that remembrance, fear begins to dissolve. You realize that your body is not decaying, it is evolving. That every cell that dies makes room for a new one, and that regeneration is not a miracle reserved for youth but a law of life itself. You begin to trust that as long as you flow, you are alive, and as long as you are alive, you are capable of renewal. Each morning when you drink water on an empty stomach, you are participating in that law. You are telling the body, I trust your intelligence. You are telling the universe, I am ready to receive. You are telling your soul, I remember. This awakening is both quiet and profound. It does not announce itself with visions or thunder. It arrives like the tide, soft but unstoppable. It seeps into your bones, into your thoughts, into your perception. You begin to sense connections everywhere, between your breath and the wind, your heartbeat and the rhythm of the ocean, your emotions and the pull of the moon. You understand that water, both inside and outside you, is governed by the same force, the cosmic rhythm that sustains life. The human body, after all, is not separate from the sea. Every mineral in your blood once belonged to the ocean. Every pulse within you echoes the tides. To drink water consciously is to return to that origin, to synchronize your personal rhythm with the universal one. That is why so many report feeling a sense of peace beyond explanation after weeks of this practice. It is the peace of belonging, the peace of no longer being separate. In ancient Hebrew mysticism, it was said that when water is blessed, the light of creation passes through it. They called it mayim chayim, the living water. When one drinks it in purity, the soul becomes transparent, and divine light flows through unhindered. To drink unconsciously, they warned, is to close the gate. But to drink with gratitude opens the path between the human and the divine. You have opened that path now. You can feel it in the way you breathe, slower, deeper. You can feel it in your thoughts, quieter, clearer. You can feel it in your presence, calmer, steadier. Even your skin seems to glow differently, as though light has found a way through. That glow is not vanity, it is resonance. The water within you has begun to vibrate in harmony with life itself. After 50, this harmony is not a luxury, it is a necessity. The world moves fast and many lose their rhythm in its current. But you have discovered something eternal. You have found that slowing down is not regression, it is evolution. The elders of many traditions lived by this truth. They did less, but they lived more. They spoke little, but their words carried depth. They moved slowly, but each gesture held grace. Their secret was not in rituals alone, but in rhythm, and rhythm begins with water, because water teaches pace. It does not rush. It moves according to balance. It knows when to fall, when to gather, when to rest. And now so do you. This awakening changes how you see not only yourself, but others. You begin to recognize that every person is carrying their own inner river, some flowing freely, some blocked, some dried by years of pain. You no longer judge. You begin to listen as water listens. You become softer, more compassionate. The anger that once rose quickly now passes like clouds. The heart, once guarded, becomes open again. This too is part of the healing. It is said that when the heart's waters flow freely, love becomes effortless. Not the love of possession or need, but the love of presence, the kind that radiates without agenda. That love heals faster than any medicine, and it begins with a single act, being in tune with your own flow. There will be mornings when you forget the ritual, days when you return to noise and haste. But the water within you remembers. It waits patiently for you to return. And when you do, it welcomes you as if no time has passed. Because time means nothing to water. It is both ancient and new in every drop. That is the essence of awakening, the realization that you too are timeless, that your body, though aging, is part of an eternal cycle of renewal, that your spirit, though weathered, is untouched by decay. You are water-walking in human form, reflecting the light of creation in every cell. When you drink each morning now, do it not as a task, but as a reunion. Let the water remind you of your origin, your purpose, your divinity. Let it whisper what the ancients already knew, that the body is a temple, and water is its prayer. For in the end, the journey of drinking water on an empty stomach is not about hydration, youth, or health alone. It is about remembering that the simplest acts, when done with awareness, can open the highest truths. It is about realizing that God does not speak in thunder, but in silence. Not in miracles, but in flow. Not in temples of stone, but in rivers of flesh. You are that temple, you are that river, and now you are awake. There comes a morning when you no longer drink the water to heal. You drink it to give thanks. The ritual that once felt like practice now feels like prayer. You rise before the world stirs, and for a few silent moments you become part of the stillness that precedes all life. The air feels gentler, the light softer, and you realize that the healing you sought was never something to acquire, it was something to uncover. It was there all along, beneath the noise, waiting for you to slow down enough to hear it. You hold the glass in your hands. The water catches the faintest light, bending it into tiny prisms that dance against the surface. You watch it move, clear and patient, and it feels as though it is watching you back. In this quiet, the boundaries between you and it begin to blur. There is no you and the water. There is only flow, one endless, seamless rhythm moving through form after form. You remember how this journey began, as curiosity, perhaps even doubt. You were told that drinking water on an empty stomach could cleanse, could heal, could renew. You tried it with the hope of changing something physical, your digestion, your skin, your fatigue. But what changed was much deeper. The body improved, yes, but the spirit, the silent observer within you, awakened. You began to feel connected again, to your breath, your heartbeat, the pulse of life running through everything. Now, as you take that first sip, you understand that this ritual is not about hydration, but about humility. It is about remembering your place in the great circle of existence, not above, not below, but within. You are water, made conscious for a time, walking through the world to experience what water feels like when it becomes human. The ancients knew this truth well. They did not see separation between spirit and substance. To them, water was the visible form of the invisible, the language through which the divine spoke to creation. When the Nile flooded, they did not see chaos, they saw renewal. When the rains fell, they did not see weather, they saw blessing. Every droplet was a word in the sacred script of life. And so when you drink your morning water with awareness, you are reading that script again. You are decoding a wisdom older than any civilization, a wisdom carried in every river, every tear, every cloud that drifts across the endless sky. After 50, you begin to see time differently. It no longer feels like a straight line but a circle, each day rising and falling like waves, each moment an opportunity to return to center. The body changes, yes, but it is not breaking. It is becoming transparent. You begin to see through it, to see the light that has always lived beneath. Water helps you see it because it is both mirror and messenger. When you look into it, you see not only your reflection but the reflection of eternity itself. You start to realize that all healing begins with remembering. The body forgets its harmony, the mind forgets its peace, and the soul forgets its connection. But when you return to stillness, when you honor something as simple as water, you begin to remember again. You remember that life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. You are not a vessel of random matter. You are the river through which creation flows. This remembrance softens you. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. You stop fearing age or loss or change. You understand that everything you have ever loved, every person, every moment, was made of the same essence that fills your glass each morning, the same water that carried the ships of explorers, that fell as rain upon ancient fields, that froze on mountaintops, now rests in your hands. And when you drink it, You take into yourself the memory of all that has ever been. That is why this ritual is sacred. It connects you not only to your health, but to the lineage of life itself. It connects you to the earth, whose veins are rivers and whose heartbeats are oceans. It connects you to the sky, whose tears fall as rain so that all living things may continue. It connects you to the stars, whose hydrogen, the simplest element, once fused to become the water you now drink. The same atoms born billions of years ago in the first light of the cosmos now flow through your veins. And so, when you drink water on an empty stomach, you're not merely caring for your body. You are participating in creation. You are completing a cycle as old as time, the journey of light becoming life, of energy becoming form, of the eternal returning to itself. You sit quietly after drinking and you feel it, that subtle, steady hum that lives beneath all things. The same hum the monks felt as they sat by sacred springs. The same hum the desert prophets heard in the silence between the winds. It is the vibration of harmony, of wholeness, of being. You are not doing anything. You are simply being, and that is enough. This is what the sages meant when they said that healing is not about adding, but about removing noise, resistance, separation. Water removes them gently. It does not destroy, it dissolves, it does not push, it carries. And as it carries away what no longer serves, it leaves behind what has always been true, peace. There is a line in the Tao that says, "He who flows as life flows knows he needs no other force." You understand it now, because in flowing with water, you have learned to flow with time. You no longer resist its passage. You move with it. You understand that the same current that carried you through youth now carries you through age. The body may slow, but the current remains eternal. You begin to notice the small miracles again, the way sunlight glimmers on a puddle after rain, the way steam rises from your cup, the way your own breath fogs a window in winter. These tiny moments become revelations. They remind you that divinity is not distant. It is immediate, intimate, present. Every droplet is a sermon. Every glass of water is communion. In reflection, you see that your body's transformation mirrored your inner one. At first you sought to cleanse the body, but the body led you deeper, into the cleansing of emotion, memory, and thought. You began to let go of resentment, of control, of the illusion that you were separate from life, and as you let go, you began to flow. The body followed, the mind followed, healing followed. You learned that peace is not given, it is allowed, that youth is not a number, it is movement, that health is not perfection, it is balance. And all of it begins with water, with the willingness to begin the day not in haste but in reverence. One day you may share this ritual with someone you love, a child, a friend, a partner, and when they ask why, you will smile and say something simple, something they can feel but not yet understand, because it reminds me who I am. You won't need to explain further. They will see it in your eyes, in your calm, in the way you move through the world with quiet strength. They will feel the peace that comes from someone who has remembered the rhythm of life. And perhaps one morning, they too will rise before dawn, hold a glass of water, and feel the same stillness you feel now. That perfect moment when the universe seems to pause between breaths, waiting for you to take your sip, waiting for you to remember. In that moment, the cycle continues, the wisdom lives on, the water flows again. The world outside may grow louder, more chaotic, more uncertain, but you will carry within you a silence that cannot be disturbed. You will know that you are part of something unbreakable, the eternal dance of flow, reflection, renewal. And when the time comes to leave this world, you will not fear it, because you will understand that death too is only transformation, another form of flow. The water within you will return to the earth, to the sky, to the rivers and seas, and someday, in another dawn, it will rise again as mist, as rain, as life, and someone somewhere will drink it and feel the same peace you feel now. This is the great secret that was never truly hidden. Everything is water, and water is everything. It is the beginning and the end, the seen and the unseen, the path and the destination. To drink it consciously is to remember that you were never lost, only asleep. Now, as you finish your glass, let silence follow. Feel gratitude for your body, your breath, your life. Know that in this moment, you are complete. There is nothing to add, nothing to fix, nothing to chase. There is only presence, there is only flow. And in that flow, you will find eternity reflected in every drop.